go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day.
Suddenly, Donald Trump becomes a martyr for the Constitution. He becomes a warrior for our rights. Donald Trump emerged from the courthouse, and I think maybe he had an earbud in and he was listening to our podcast during the day in court, because I was railing against the unbelievable, unconstitutional gag order that has been placed on the president of the United States. He's the defendant here, right? You realize that whenever there are gag orders put in place by judges, like 99.9% of the time, it's to protect the defendant from leaks out of the DA's office, the state. See, the prosecutors, they have all the power here, right? Rights are supposed to protect we, the people, the citizen, from the state throwing their power at us and taking our rights away from us by incarcerating us, or worse, even taking our life if it's a capital case. That's why our entire system has been set up to protect us from the all-powerful state, from being tyrannical and authoritarian against us. And so when there's ever a gag order put in place, oftentimes it's against the prosecutors from trying the case in the public square, from possibly poisoning the jury pool against the defendant. I've spoken to multiple legal analysts on the air and off the air about this gag order, and they said it is unprecedented that the defendant is not allowed to defend himself in the public square. And yesterday's ruling finding him for $1,000 and threatening Trump with jail for literally speaking the truth about Michael Cohen, the prosecution's #1 star witness, by saying he's a perjurer. Last time he was under oath, he lied. He had to go to jail for that. That's the truth, and he got penalized for that. That's why I was railing against it. I was talking about how unconstitutional it is, how the entire shenanigans should be thrown out immediately, but we sadly have a process here, and we have to wait for it to get overturned eventually. Well, Donald Trump heard all of that. Well, I don't know, he heard it, but I think he did, because when he emerged from the courthouse, he had this to say.
And it's a disgrace. And then you have the other thing that maybe is even more disgraceful, is the gag order, where I can't basically, I have to watch every word I tell you people. You ask me a question, a simple question, I'd like to give it, but I can't talk about it. Because this judge has given me a gag order and said you'll go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day. But what's happening here is a disgrace, and the appellate courts ought to get involved.
Wow. So basically, he just said, put up or shut up, Judge. The Constitution's more important than jail. I'm going to go ahead and speak my mind. I mean, he didn't there. He did use caution, and he said, listen, I'm not allowed to say this. I'm not allowed to say that. But then he says the Constitution is more important than going to jail. I'll make that sacrifice any day. He's ready to martyr himself behind bars for the sake of the Constitution. Let's hear it one more time, at least that part of it, and let's talk through exactly how this might play out. This is a fascinating wrinkle, actually.
So you'll go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day.
Okay, so it's interesting if you think about the trajectory of Donald Trump's criminal issues, starting with the first indictment well over a year ago now, right? It was, I guess, before the 2022 midterm elections, if I remember right, when the indictment started. And I believe Alvin Bragg's may have been the first one, maybe the E. Jean Carroll one. That moment began the trajectory of Donald Trump growing in popularity with the Republican base. It was at that moment where Ron DeSantis will tell you, the prospects of him becoming the nominee for the Republicans died. The second they brought charges against Donald Trump, civil and criminal, there was no looking back, because we Republicans see exactly what they're doing to him, and we're not going to play that game. We're not going to let the left, the Democrats, or the media get away with this. And through the course of the last 2 years, as he has had his days in court, even when he lost the civil case to E. Jean Carroll, the American people, or at least the Republicans, have seen it to be the sham political kangaroo court that it is. And so his support continues to grow. Loyalty around him continues to grow. And I know that Rachel Maddow can't believe it and Jen Psaki can't believe it. I don't understand. He's been convicted and the Republicans still support him. Yeah, because it's all bull. That's why. I had to find my button there. And so now we've reached sort of an ebb in that, right? It's sort of plateaued. He's now doing the criminal trial. He's now, facing the day-to-day rigor of the trial. He's leading he's leading Biden in national polls as well as regional polls in each of the battleground states. Imagine, if you will, if Donald Trump is actually thrown in jail unilaterally, not by a verdict of a jury, but by the emotional reaction of a temperamental judge who doesn't like that Donald Trump is actually using his First Amendment rights of free speech. Imagine if the judge actually says, you said this, you tweeted this, you're going to jail for speaking and for tweeting on social media. And they throw the nominee for the Republican Party and a former president of the United States behind bars. Well, not only does he increase in his martyr status, not just with Republicans, but for independent observers who are watching this and recognize that it is unfair. Over 50% of the American people right now think the Biden administration is using the judicial process as a political weapon against Donald Trump. That was a poll from last week. Not only does he immediately increase the martyr factor here, but what happens next? Well, the Trump lawyers will appeal that. They will see right now this unconstitutional gag order. That's just baked in the cake. He can't appeal that, is my understanding. He has to wait until after the trial is over, and then they'll add all of these things to the appeal. But if they throw him in jail, well, then he can ask for injunctive relief. He can actually go to a higher court and say he can't do this. And then he could actually face another victory. But this time, again, he's not fighting for himself or his own freedom, as he just put it. He's fighting for the First Amendment. Suddenly, Donald Trump becomes a martyr for the Constitution. He becomes a warrior for our rights. Think about that. And once again, politically speaking, this entire fiasco that they have constructed out of whole cloth that has nothing to do with the law, nothing to do with judicial precedent or jurisprudence, but everything to do with harming this man and harming you, the voters who would like to support him. It all comes back to bite them in the again. I didn't need to bleep that. I can say ass. So that's how this could play out. And I wonder, listen, everyone says Trump plays 4D chess. I'm not so sure about that, but I also think that he's pretty smart politically. And he's got media savvy, and he understands where his support is right now. And he understands that as of this moment, this trial is actually hurting Biden and the Democrats more than it's hurting him. Now, that could change. No one knows what's going to happen if he gets convicted from something. But if all along the way, the entire process is seen to be unconstitutional and unfair to the average observer, then even a conviction will have a mitigating quality to it. So when he stands up and says the Constitution is more important than going to jail, and then if they actually do throw him in jail, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't mean to project too far ahead because I'm not a real good, I'm not going to give you my predictions on stuff, but this could play out in the way that I just laid out, and it could actually, again, end up helping him. Not just with most American people, but, I'll tell you honestly, I support President Trump. He wasn't my first choice back in 2016. But he eventually certainly was my last choice when it came to him and Hillary Clinton. I voted for him gladly over her. But one of the things that I was sort of hesitant about is I like a president who really has well-versed in the Constitution and our rights. I want to make sure a president stays within their boundaries and they actually have a love for our founding documents and our Constitution. And I'm not saying, I think Trump was a very, very good president, a great president, but he didn't always lead with our individual constitutional rights, our God-given rights protected by the Constitution. Frankly, I think that if he was more if those values and principles were more instilled and ingrained in his DNA, we might not have seen the lockdown. He might have said, hey, guys, Dr. Fauci, I think I understand what you're trying to say, but there's no way I'm going to endorse this because it's unconstitutional. Because every time this was tested at courts, it was found to be unconstitutional. Remember when they tried to keep you from going to church? But then ultimately courts said, you can't do that. So I think this has been as a conservative, it's been a blind spot for him. I like my conservatives to live and breathe the Constitution like it's flowing through their veins. Well, I think Donald Trump is now learning a great lesson in the Constitution, how critically important it is. For him to say the Constitution is more important than going to jail tells me that he's ready to rally even more support from diehard conservatives who have been waiting for this kind of thing to happen. Not for him to get jailed, but for him to lead with the Constitution and our rights every single time. Which brings us to today, as he was heading to the courthouse. Again, he made his usual stop. See, he changed his tie. He made his usual stop in front of the cameras to say a few words about the state of affairs in this country, considering the fact that the judge and the Democrats all across the board, it's all Democrats who are doing this to him, are keeping him from campaigning. This is basically his opportunity to campaign for president. So let's hear what he had to say.
The country is on fire. There are protests all over the country. I've never seen anything like this. Many graduation ceremonies are being canceled. They're canceled, as you know, in Colombia. They're canceling a lot of them. And we have a president that just refuses to talk because he can't talk. You know that. So does everyone else. Some of the statements made about this witch hunt on CNN, fake news CNN, Michael Moore said the proof of falsifying records has not been accomplished. On Good Morning America, they said, we heard that expense payments to lawyers are legal expenses. You pay a lawyer expense payments. We didn't put it down as construction costs, the purchase of sheetrock, the electrical cost. The legal expense that we paid was put down as legal expense. There's nothing else you could say. You don't have to put down anything, I guess. But we put down legal expense was legal expense. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Attorney? And everyone's saying, oh, gee, that's the fraud. That's what they're trying to get us on. The fact that we call a legal expense. They marked it down in the books. The check was signed. And the other thing, this was approved by all agencies. Everybody saw this. There was nothing being hidden at all. That's what they're all writing now. There's been nothing hidden. And it went through agencies, and I guess it went through the IRS also. It went through IRS, it went through the FEC, it went through everything. Also, NBC Today showed the challengers that there is no smoking gun, no email or tape to prove the president's intent. They don't have a way to prove that. That's NBC Today show. And then Fox News, Katie Cherkasky, said that the gag order is unconstitutional. Which of course it is. The gag order is unconstitutional. So with all that's going on, they have no case. Every single legal scholar that I see, I mean, maybe there's somebody out there, some whack job, but virtually everyone that I've seen, I said there's absolutely no case. It's a case that shouldn't have been brought. The previous DA wouldn't bring it. Bragg didn't want to bring it, and he brought it because I'm running in number one place. This all comes out of the White House and crooked Joe Biden. This comes from the White House, and it's all Biden because it's an attack on his political opponent. That hasn't happened in this country. It does happen in third world countries, but it hasn't happened in this country, and it's a shame. And the trial is a very unfair trial. It's a very, very unfair trial. The good news is they have nothing. Thank you.
Solid statement from President Trump. I only have two observations to make. The first is right in the middle there. He said, I won't see any legal analysts who haven't said that this is a fraud. There may be some whack job out there. Pretty sure by using the term whack job, he's referring to Jeffrey Toobin. I know it's a little on the nose, but when I think legal analyst whack job, Toobin's the only thing that comes to mind. Sadly, I mean, I need bleach in my eyes to get that vision out. But that's what I'm thinking. Also, right at the beginning, what Trump said here, again, solid statement and great for him to read off what CNN and the Today Show and other mainstream media outlets, corporate-owned media outlets who hate him had to say about how bad the trial is. So no problem with his statement, except for this right here. I think he's a little guilty of hyperbole here.
The country is on fire. There are protests all over the country. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, they've never seen anything like this. Mr. Trump, summer of 2020, first week of June, while you were in the White House, you looked out the window and you saw it right there in front of you. Black Lives Matter burning down the church in front of the White House at Lafayette Square. The protests, they had to clear them out with smoke bombs and pepper spray. I mean, I guess by saying he's never seen anything like this, I guess he's never seen anything like this so coordinated across college campuses and left unabated by Democrat governors in those states. But we saw some pretty bad stuff that summer. It was all part of the plan. And finally, politically, as I said, it looks like Donald Trump right now is ahead of the game on this case. That can change in any moment. Of course, today, the actress known as Stormy Daniels is testifying. So you know that news is going to be wall to wall with B-roll pictures of a big boobed porn star who allegedly had an affair with Donald Trump. Now, I think for some voters, that actually might help them. But, you know, public opinion might be swayed by all of the tawdriness that they're going to throw at you today. That's the whole reason for this case. That's why I told you all you're hearing is hush money to a porn star, which is honestly not really the crux of this case, as you just heard. It's a financial records fraud case. It has nothing to do, well, it has a little to do with the hush money, but that's why they're calling it a hush money case. Hush money to porn star, hush money to porn star. And today's the porn star's day in the light. So we'll see. I mean, listen, one thing we know about Stormy Daniels is she literally will prostitute herself for $1. And so we'll see what happens and which way the wind blows while she's under oath today. But the two star witnesses they have is a porn star, a woman who prostitutes herself for money on a regular basis. That's what she does. It's her profession by definition. And Michael Cohen, the lawyer who just got out of jail for lying under oath in a similar courtroom setting. That's it. That's what they got. And they still might get their conviction. Don't get me wrong. They absolutely might get their conviction. But if Donald Trump wins the day politically through this entire process, then one thing is really ironic and actually pretty critical to bear in mind. If this spells doom for the Democrats and this was a complete miscalculation, and this actually ends up in a strange way helping him, as it appears it already has, even if he gets convicted, then future presidents will actually owe it to Donald Trump for going through this, again, like a martyr, going through this crucible on their behalf. Because if it helps this guy in the long run, as much as I would love to see future presidents prosecuted, I've got a couple in mind that I would love to bring charges against. It'll never happen again. It never should have happened. It never has happened. And if Donald Trump actually comes out ahead politically because of this, it will never happen again. And you'll have Donald Trump to thank for going through this.